and we are ready to put our hands on the next session, which is delivered by Nadav from SuperSonic. Hi, Nadav.
Hey Igor, can you hear me well now?
Yes, I do. How are you, my good man?
I'm great, I'm great. Thank you so much. How are you?
Also fine. So you are broadcasting from sunny Israel, right?
Sunny Israel, it is. Yes, sunny
Oh,
and isolated Israel with the COVID
oh,
and everything.
that's amazing. I would love so much to go to the beach right now where we could swim and do stuff. We do have sea here in St. Petersburg physically, but it would be not the best idea in the world to swim in the Baltic Sea right now.
Sure thing. I'm usually every year visiting St. Petersburg for White Nights physically. It's the first year after 4 years in a row that I'm not attending it because there is no physical event.
Well, we broke such the long series, but still we are doing it virtually right now. So I hope you can go to Interactive Expo and check the dividing bridges and St. Isaac's Cathedral and some other activities our magnificent modelers prepared. So we're waiting for you to start the talk. Over to you right now, and good luck.
Great. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for joining it. I'll speak in the next 25 minutes a little bit about how Supersonic believed that it's the right way to launch, successfully launch a hyper casual game. And before I start, two slides about Supersonic. So we are relatively a new gaming company. We were founded in January this year, only 6 months ago. And we are independent company that owned by Iron Source. If you know, Iron Source is today the biggest SDK network and the leading growth platform, working probably with all game developers around the world. And Russia specifically is a very big market for Iron Source as well. So Supersonic was founded beginning of this year as part of Iron Source's subsidiary company. We are based in Tel Aviv, and we're actually both publishing hyper casual games, working with hundreds of developers around the world, and we are in-house developing some of the games as well. So we're doing both of them with a clear goal to become the most significant player in the hyper-casual space. Um, this year, in the past 5 months since we started the activity, we've already launched 10 chart-topping games. I guess that if you are a player of hyper-casual, you probably played some of our games. All of them were pretty much successful and got to the top 10 in the US. Some were number one, some were in the top 10, but we are continuing with our growth. We are continuing developing and improving our current 10 games, and of course introducing more games to the market. And this is what we did in the past 6 months. And what I want to discuss now is 4 steps for how to successfully launch your hyper casual game, where the goal, I guess, is clear for everyone, right? In the hyper casual space, but also in any other gaming genre, you always aspire to build a game where you can have an LTV that is higher than the needed CPI for scale, right? As long as you have this balance between the two sides of the equation, where you're able to generate a strong LTV and the lower CPI on scale, then you have not only a successful game, but a successful business that you can scale for a long time, term, and of course for a very big audience. And I'll start with the 4 steps that we are following very closely. The first two related more to the game development. The last two are more around how to publish and scale the games in the right way. And let's start with the step number one, which is probably where everything begins, is to find the right gameplay. And I think that in hyper casual specifically, it's very crucial because we know that the gameplay in hyper casual is the most influential factor on both the CPI and the retention and playtime. And here it's important to say, because what we see usually is that if a specific gameplay is not working and the test is not successful, only by changing the skill or the art, usually it's not enough to get to this balance between CPI and LTV. And as the gameplay is responsible for the majority of the performance of these two sides. And therefore, you always need to start with finding the right gameplay and move forward into the later stages only once you feel that you find the right gameplay, a gameplay that is both marketable and user like it, and also enjoyable and user play it, and the retention is good and the playtime is good. And in hyper casual specifically, the right gameplay, as we see it, we need to follow a few important things. First of all, we need to make sure the action and the goal are clear to the user, because in non-hyper casual games, you can have a very long tutorial because it's type of game that are targeted to a very specific audience that are probably more trained with games, that they understand the flow of, let's say, RPG or mid-core game much better. But hyper casual, where you aim and your target audience is everyone, you have to make sure that the action and the goal of the game is clear and intuitive. And usually we see that in most hyper casual games, there is not even tutorial or a very, very, very minor tutorial. And if you need a very big and complex tutorial to explain the game and the goal to the user, you probably didn't find the right hyper casual game that will be able to be appealing to the mass audience out there. We know that controls are super significant for the retention, and retention depends a lot on the controls and feeling of the game. Tap, hold, drag. We usually recommend to keep one button game. We know that camera perspective that is complementing the game is also crucial as well. Hyper casual usually gameplay will be level based. It needs to be forgiving and rewarding, generating satisfaction among the users that play it. And at the end of the day, we see that the gameplay impact mainly the CPI, the day zero playtime, and the day one retention. I'm not speaking about later KPIs, which we monitor as well, that are more depends on the game itself, but the gameplay per se usually impact these three elements, where the most important thing that we start with is the CPI, right? Because it's the easiest to test. How, does the gameplay appealing to many users and the CPI is low enough? If not, then probably it's not a great candidate to be a hyper casual hit. Step two, after we found the right gameplay, right? We've tested several different concepts, several different gameplays, and we finally find the one that is appealing. The CPI is low, users see the ad, they understand what the game is about, they like it and they install it, and the initial engagement with the game is great, both from playtime and retention perspective. This is where we are changing the hat from testing different concepts and different gameplays to building the best game possible around the successful gameplay. And this is where we start looking at more deeper elements of the game and not just the gameplay itself, like content and how many levels and how many diversification are we generating in the game. How does it look? What do we have enough juice? How is the art look? What is the churn per level? Which levels are working better? Which levels have a problem that need to be fixed? How do you generate the progression feeling and you make sure that the users feel that they are making progress and the interest to play the game stay for the long term? What meta are you building around the game? Because you want to give another layer to the game and you want to have the ability to monetize, and we know that monetization and strong meta goes together well. And here I want to give you an example, for instance, for our fourth game that we launched in 2020, Hide and Seek. And when we started tested it back in the beginning of March, we all saw that the CPI was low from the very first beginning. The retention was nice to have, which shows us that the gameplay has the potential. And then we said, okay, this is time to take this gameplay, which looks promising in our eyes, and to convert it into a game. We created smaller levels. We made the character move slower. We start doing the polishing of making this gameplay into a full game. We added the vertical component to add more content to the game. We added menus and simplified UI to make sure that everything clear. And of course, monetization opportunities around meta, skins, progression, etc. And you can see the jump that we had from around 32% day one retention to 49, 50% day one. And this is exactly what we are looking first, to understand the CPI and the initial engagement show potential. If we do see it, then we invest in the game, then we are A/B testing many different elements of the game until we get to the best performing metrics to make sure that we can generate a game that has a higher LTV than the needed CPI for a scale. The same was done on Sort It, which was our first game actually in 2020, where we start improving it from February until March, where we added many, many different things. We changed the tutorial to be static, to be interactive and not static image. We make the movement and the control more fluent and faster. We added a lot of meta. When we start working on the game in February, there was no meta at all. There was no virtual economy at all. And we added this to add more content. And of course, that it allows us to add monetization as well. And you can see once again, the retention improves from the around 39, 38% to almost 50% as well after working on the game. So these will be the first two stages that we have when working on a hyper casual game, and it's important to follow it. Make sure that you have the right gameplay that allows you to have a low CPI and a good basis for retention and playtime. Once you get there, and only once you get there, don't waste your time too early. Once you get there, you can build a full game around it with all the rules that a full game needs to have in terms of content, in terms of progression, in terms of meta. And then you need to stabilize your numbers, your day 1, your day 3, your day 7, your day 14. Everyone goes as far as he's interested in going, and make sure that you have the right game with the right retention, the right CPI. And this is where you move into to the late two stages of successfully launch a hyper casual. And step number 3 will be to implement a rich monetization strategy, because we need to remember at the end of the day that retention and playtime are not the goal, right? We cannot make a great game to a great business by just having a very strong retention and playtime. It might make it a great game, but it's not a great business yet. The retention and playtime, and if they are great, it's great, are only the basis or the infrastructure for the LTV that we need to generate. And this is what's important the most. What LTV and what monetization can we do around it? And we all know that there are two channels to monetize users that are playing a great game, either by ads, or can be divided into banners, interstitial, and rewarded video, and of course, in-app purchasing. And each channel has its own optimization methodology to make sure that you are doing it on the best way possible, because just adding one ad unit or two ad unit or even all of them will not maximize your LTV per the retention and playtime you manage to generate. But there is a lot of optimization to do around each ad unit to make sure that you are actually maximizing your potential of the game. And every ad unit behaves differently, by the way. Here is just an example of rewarded video versus interstitial. And what you can see here is the average ads per user per day, right? You can show 1, 2, 3, 10 impression per user per day, and how it impacts different metrics. So what you can see is that ads ARPDAU is going up, right? As you are showing more ads to the user, the ARPDAU is going up. By the way, the incrementality of the late impressions is lower than the first ones, right? You can see that in the beginning, every incremental impression is generating a significantly incremental revenue or ARPDAU, while in the late impressions, the incrementality is low. On the other hand, we can say that retention is impacted in a different way. For instance, in interstitial, if you are showing more and more impressions per user, then retention can slightly go down. On a rewarded video, it behaves otherwise because it's an opt-in ad unit where the user chooses to watch an ad. Usually it doesn't have such a negative impact on retention. But what's interesting here, for instance, when you are looking at interstitial, is that you say, okay, if I'm showing more interstitial, let's say every 20 seconds, then my ARPDAU go up, but my retention goes down. What is better to do? What is the optimal impression per user or frequency between ads that will maximize my LTV? And there is no one answer to that. By the way, it's a process, and it's optimization process and A/B testing process, because for every game, the sweet spot is a bit different to maximize your LTV. And this is how we make decisions, right? We are not making decisions by looking at ARPDAU or by looking at retention or by looking at playtime, because all of them are just a tool to get to the final goal. What we care about is LTV. We are testing different methodologies, we are testing different setups, and we are comparing the lifetime value, which takes into consideration both the ARPDAU and the retention and the playtime and all things that are getting impacted. And what we care about is what setup is generating the maximum LTV, which will help us to scale the game as much as possible. Reward video, on the other hand, unlike interstitial, where you decide how many impressions are you going to show to the user, is an opt-in ad unit, meaning that you cannot decide how many impressions you will show. The user will decide how many impressions he wants to see. And here you need to be clever or sophisticated enough to implement rewarded video in the right way to maximize the engagement from the user perspective, right? By having diversification and by having it in a clear and visible places, by having it in the right timing and by offering a valuable reward, which is dynamic and changing the value according to the user stage in the game. And this what will help you to maximize the implementation of rewarded video. And this is as well something that we are analyzing very, very closely, meaning that for each of our games, we are looking at rewarded video, we are looking at the engagement rate, meaning how many users choose to watch at least one rewarded video a day, what is the usage rate, which means what is the average impressions per user per day, what is the impression per DAO, which is the combination of both of them. And we are looking at this data per country, per ad unit, per placement, right? We can see which placement is working well on rewarded video and which is not working as good and needs to get an improvement. And again, it's all about analyzing the data, optimizing each ad unit separately, and finding the setup that is maximizing your LTV. I'm going back to the change that we did and sorted. If you all remember a few slides ago in the mid of February, where we have decided to add economy, meta skins to the game, and we see that it has a very positive impact on retention, but not only that, not only it improved the retention because now there is more content in the game, it also improved the engagement with the ad unit and the LTV. As you can see here, we almost tripled our users' engagement rate with rewarded video in the US before adding the meta and after adding the meta. Before that, it was mainly skip level, the placement we used. And this is exactly the process that you need to do in step number 3. So you found the right gameplay that is appealing and has the basic metrics. You took it and you made it into a great game with strong retention, strong playtime and content and progression. And then you are adding the monetization layer that takes everything you did in stage 1 and 2 and convert this playtime and retention numbers into a LTV that you can go and scale the game with. And the fourth stage on this funnel of successfully launching hyper-casual game will be to crack creatives and to optimize CPI accordingly, because not only that you want to push the LTV up as much as possible, you want to push CPI down, right? Because this is your margin, the difference that you will have between LTV and CPI. And we know how crucial today creatives are in order to optimize and get the best CPI out there. And not only that creatives are crucial to lower the CPI and to allow you to have the right margin or more scale, it's also today part of your onboarding funnel. And what we see a lot is that the creative that the user coming from impacts his behavior within the app, right? Sometimes the creative is even the tutorial of the game. So if someone came from a playable ad and the playable was well built and well executed, then the playable is kind of the tutorial of the game, and then he's more likely to stay and stick into the game and have better day with zero playtime and day one retention. And it's important to say so because when you are analyzing the performance of your creatives, you shouldn't analyze only how well they are converting users and how low the CPI is, which is very, very important as well. You should also look at what is the quality that they bring and what is the revenue they are generating afterward. And as you all probably know today, the scale that you are getting when you are doing user acquisition depends on how much you are willing to pay per install and what is your conversion, either IPM or CVR, CTR, depends on the UA source that you are doing the user acquisition for. And few important things that we are following. First of all, we always make sure that for SDK networks, which are a bit different than social, which are mainly video-based, on SDK networks, it's very, very, very important to run on several creative types and who have both playable ads and video and interactive end card or gift card or whatever you are using, because we know that different ad units, and in SDK networks, when you are showing your ad in different games, there is significant role to the ad unit the ad is being showed via. And it's important to make sure that you have all the creative types possible to win as many impressions, both on different ad units within other games. Sorry. We know that localization is super important, and we always try to localize all of our creatives to be in the local language, because we know that it impacts conversion as well and impact the CPI, and it's a relatively simple execution with a potentially important impact. We always make sure to refresh our creatives, because it's not one time task and this is it. I cracked the creative, now I can go to sleep for a couple of months and to make money, because we know that every time that you're cracking a creative that is generating a low CPI and a great quality, it's a temporary situation. Because after a while, after the ad is being shown to several users, suddenly the performance of the ad start to drop, and you are start to exhausting the creative. And then this is your time to introduce a new design to the market and to convert more users that were not converted by the old creative. And if you are not doing it, you will not be able to generate or to maintain the scale and the growth that you are looking to have. The other thing that is important is to look at the ad and to analyze it as granular as possible. And what we try to do is to treat creatives like we treat games. Just like in the stage number 1, if you all remember, or stage number 2, we are analyzing the retention and the playtime and the churn per level, and try to understand how to build the best experience for the user. We are doing the same for our ads as well. For instance, when we are showing playable, we are trying to analyze the behavior and the experience the user gets based on data within the playable, to understand what should be improved in order to generate better experience that will result on better conversion or traffic. We're using the in-ad analytics platform by ironSource that gives great indication about it. We can see where users drop within the playable itself. We can see what is better, right? What is generating higher CTR, where the user decides to move to the store and to install the game. Should the user lose in the playable, or should the user win in the playable? Should it be more challenging and more difficult, or should it be more simple? And we are analyzing all of these. We are seeing what share of the losing users decide to install the game, what share of the winning users decides to install the game, and then we adjust and we introduce new versions of our creatives based on the data points that we are collecting, and we are analyzing both the conversion and the ROAS, if you all remember, because this is the two metrics to analyze for your creative, in order to make sure that you are optimizing everything as much as possible, and just analyzing step by step in the funnel, just like analyzing levels churn in the game itself, to understand what level should be eliminated, what level should get more weight in the game, what the user like better and what the user like less, and to adjust it and to make sure that we're introducing the best product possible. This is it. This is the 4 main steps that we are following in SuperSonic, from the very early stage of finding the right concept until making sure that once it's published, it's getting the right scale or maximum profit by optimizing both the LTV and the CPI on the other hand, and maintaining the highest margin as possible. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Nadav. That's a great talk and an outstanding guide for how to launch your hyper casual game, what to target, what to measure. And I hope many people who are watching us right now live, they see now that launching a hyper casual game is more than just creating something very simple. It's a very complex process. It's very business wise, and you should know and measure many things. Thanks a lot for that. So first question to you. So we discuss it very often, but still it's a very hot topic. So what do you think is going to be the next big thing in hyper casual games market?
So in my eyes, and the trend that we see is that hyper casual lately becoming a bit more deep, right? We see it for a while, from the very early days of hyper casual, where everything were 2D and relatively shallow, with the same gameplay over and over looped in different shapes, Today, everything is 3D. There is much more content. There is much more sophistication, much more progression, much more meta. And in my eyes, this is the future of hyper casual, meaning that keep it as a mass audience games that everyone can play while making them a bit more deep, a bit more rich in terms of content, in terms of experience. And I think that this is the process and this is the place that hyper casual is going to.
Thank you very much, Nadav, for the great insights. So we have a question from the chat. It's pretty general, but still interesting. So George Carmona asks, what would be your suggestions to find good ideas for a hyper casual game? What's your number one source for the ideas?
Yeah, so probably it's the most challenging part to find the right gameplay and the right creative idea. What we see is, first of all, we're recommend to follow a few different trends. One, of course, will be the top charts trend, right? You can always see what are the 100 most installed games in the US currently, today or yesterday, to understand what do users like to play today. Because whatever is in the top 100 is probably appealing, it probably has a relatively competitive CPI and probably a good retention and a good hooking. So understanding what users play today gives you an indication of what trends are hot today. On top of that, it will be probably following not games, but following trends that we see in users' behavior in the social, in the social different apps. What do they like? What do they speak about? What do they like to do now in the quarantine? We saw many behaviors of users that convert into games. So following the top charts and following the social apps trend and content that users like and engage with can give you the next idea for the next hit game.
Thank you very much, Nadav. We have another question, which is very interesting. It's from Nikita Shirev, and he asks, do you as a publisher help with the game, the art of the game? Do you provide a art designer or like such the help?
Yeah, so basically, we don't work this way because we are not developing the game itself. In rare cases, we can do it, but I think that the balance between and the relationship between publisher and developer is that publishing developer is executing the game itself. The publisher is sharing all the time idea and methodologies how to improve the game, and then afterward he published the game. He's not building the game itself from scratch because then he's the developer and the publisher of the game. So basically, we are looking for studios that are capable of building a game, right? From art perspective, from code perspective. In rare cases, we can support, and in case there is any specific need, we can definitely support everything. But the overall relationship we are looking for is studio that can execute the game performance with our support, with our consulting, and then we will take and publish it and make it from a great game into a great business.
Thank you very much. A great answer. So, guys, if you look into making your great game a great business, go reach out to SuperSonic team. They have a cool booth on Interactive Expo. Get in touch with them, and maybe you can find some great solutions to create a great business. Thank you very much, Nadav, for coming and for sharing your passion and vision.
For sure, thank you very much. And by the way, we've just launched a self-serve platform that allow all developers in the world to submit their game in our website and to test it in our platform and see the CPI and see the potential of their idea to understand whether they need to follow it or not. So we're trying to build product and to build technology as much as possible to exactly ease the process for all developers around the world to find their next hit for the gaming chart.
That's amazing to know. Where can we find this platform? Is it on your website?
So once you submit the game in our website, in supersonic.com, you have submit your game, then you get access to the platform where you can upload your game. Everything is happening automatically. We start the testing and marketability process on our end. Of course, we are financing yet, and you can see in real time the results. And then after a couple of days, it's usually around 3 or 4 days of testing, you see the CPI, and you can understand whether there is potential in the gameplay that you picked or not, and you should move to the next concept.
That's fantastic. So automation is the key and the winning solution. So guys, I believe if you are a hyper casual game developer, go check out that platform. Thanks once again, Nadav. Have a nice day. Goodbye and take care.
Same for you. Bye bye.